Trump administration is proposing to ask would-be travelers to the U.S. to disclose what social media platforms they use. Answering the question would apparently be optional. So what are they trying to achieve with this? Will it really make America more secure? And as Beijing tries to attract 1,000 high-end global experts before 2020 by bringing in a talent introduction policy as outlined by the central government, what success has it already had, and how can it at the same time help Chinese startup companies to prosper? Welcome to The Point. I'm Lu Xin. Now, the Trump administration is proposing to include Chinese holders of long-term U.S. business and visitor visas traveling to the U.S. to disclose what social media platforms they use. According to the website Political, travelers would be asked online to identify the platforms they use and reportedly give their handles. Answering the question would be optional, U.S. Customs and Border Protection said in a notice. Those who don't want to answer will have their travel requests processed without a negative interpretation or inference, the notice added. It's also reported that such a screening was put in place at the end of last year under President Obama for foreign visitors under the visa waiver program. Now the public has 60 days to comment on the new proposal before it will be formally considered. And joining me to discuss the matter is Timothy Hagel, a professor from the University of Iowa. And Professor Hagel, thank you very much for joining us today. Now, what we are paying specific attention to at this moment is that the Chinese travelers are being asked to provide such information as the very latest step in supposedly President Trump's effort to make America safer. What is your comment on that? What do you think is behind all of that?
Well, we've had a few incidents here in the United States where people who committed terrorist acts were later found to have made comments that seemed to be that they were being radicalized here in the United States, and we found those comments on their social media. And so there's a certain amount of concern that we should be, or at least law enforcement should be, looking at the social media, since that seems to be fairly popular among a variety of groups. Now, as far as picking on one group of people versus another, and in particular looking at the social media of Chinese, I think that it's a matter of looking at it not just for one group or all groups, but if trying to focus on particular people, say Muslims, then you get into questions about religious freedom and so forth. And so the law enforcement seems to have to cast that net more widely, and certainly to the extent that it's voluntary, that it maybe gives a tip-off as to whether people have something to hide or not, and whether the law enforcement wants to go more broadly.
As you mentioned, it is indeed an optional choice. I mean, you can agree to provide your social media handle, or you can opt not to pay attention to that. And it is said that refusing to do so would not negatively affect whether you will be provided entry or not. So if that is optional, what is the point? I mean, help explain that. What is the point of asking people to do it in the first place? And, you know, how is that supposed to make America safer?
Well, the idea of at least asking people to do it as an optional thing is that perhaps if people don't have anything to hide, that they can simply say, yes, go ahead and look at my social media. Here are my handles for Twitter or Facebook or what have you. If somebody says, no, I'd rather not divulge that information, then it may be an opportunity for law enforcement to take a closer look. Now, we have to keep in mind, of course, that on any of these applications, people can hide information, they can lie, they can omit certain information, but law enforcement often has other means of finding that information. So it's often less a matter of, well, if I don't reveal this, they won't know, than if, well, if I don't reveal this, then law enforcement actually can say, they're hiding something here, and we've already know that there's some information that we should pay attention to, and so then they look more closely at a particular individual who seems to be engaging in that type of behavior.
Well, that definitely seems to be an enormous task for the law enforcement official. And I was told that not only you can do that online while you're updating your personal information to be able to get into the United States. Sometimes at the customs you can be stopped and asked to open your cell phone and show the officer what kind of social platform you use. Is it really effective in screening out, in vetting potential terrorists, you think?
Well, I think that remains to be seen. Again, it's one of these things that, given past history, as I was saying, that some people who had engaged in terrorist acts in the United States had those sorts of things on their social media that indicated that perhaps they were being radicalized. So it's one of those things that law enforcement almost has to check, even though it will be a burden on them in terms of having more people that have to process that information, have to check those sorts of things and so forth. And so it's certainly not a guarantee, and it's certainly not a guarantee of keeping America safe or any other country if they wanted to engage in these types of checks. But it's one of those things that, well, you never know, and certainly there are going to be times perhaps when somebody might put something on social media that they might not think to remove or to hide, and so maybe somebody could be caught.
Yeah. Now, Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly is reported to have said that in order to screen out potential terrorists, the government was considering asking visitors from certain countries to provide the password to their social media accounts. That definitely raises the question about privacy leaks. What is your thought on that?
It does, and as far as people coming into the United States, that they don't have constitutional rights. Now, of course, we can talk about privacy in a general sense from one country to another, but at least as far as the United States is concerned, and under our Constitution, we certainly have, as American citizens or foreign citizens who are in America, have rights under the Constitution, the right of privacy, as we say, and so the government would be limited once people are already in the country. But until those people get into the country as legal residents or visitors of one sort or another, they don't have the same privacy rights. And so in that sense, it could be, although I think it would be odd to always ask people for their password, but there may be some circumstances when people, when law enforcement may feel justified because of other factors that are present, that they want to ask, well, let's see your passwords for these types of accounts.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much, Professor Timothy Hagel, joining us from the University of Iowa. That was the discussion on how and why Chinese visitors have been asked to optionally provide their social media information. Now, let's turn our attention to another similar subject, that is the revised version of U.S. President Donald Trump's temporary travel ban targeting predominantly Muslim countries. Now, it has been reported that the revised version would not target certain groups, such as green card holders. To find out more about this and its potential implications, I'm joined by David Leopold, former president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. David, thank you once again for joining us. Now, U.S. President Donald Trump is expected to reissue his revised ban later this week. How far do you think it can go without running foul of the Seattle federal judge's ruling blocking the previous ban?
Well, it's hard to say. I mean, look, I think the important point here is that Donald Trump knows that he overstepped it. He knows that he overstepped the law. The very fact that he has to go back and rewrite his travel ban shows that he knows that the federal judges in Washington and the other federal judges around the country are onto him and know that he's in violation of the law and the Constitution. Your question is, how far can he go? I think that remains to be seen. What they're going to try to do is cut out or leave out legal permanent residents, green card holders, and people with visas. The problem I think they're going to run into, frankly, is that that's not going to be enough, because if you look at the lawsuit in Washington State, if you look at what was alleged, what was the problem in that case and what the courts focused on and what the Court of Appeals focused on was the harm to the state of Washington, specifically to the universities, because they're unable to bring in students, they're unable to bring in scholars and do exchanges, and it definitely impacts on commerce, and that's just one industry. So I think the president is still overreaching from what I've seen in the press. I haven't seen the actual revised
Of course, we're
revised
talking about
travel
this
ban,
subject.
but we'll see.
Yeah, we're talking about this revised travel ban based on media reports. Now, if that is really the case, can we look at it as a signal of compromise by the Trump administration, given the kind of fierce opposition he has encountered, or is it just a strategy of giving up some small things so that he can achieve his ultimate goal, whatever that is?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think, first of all, you know, one has to wonder, why are we doing this to begin with? We have very strong vetting systems in our law already. Mm-hmm. We have systems that, you know, check backgrounds, that check internet. Your previous guest was very articulate about that in terms of checking social media accounts and biometrics. I think that this is all a political game, frankly. I don't think that there's any need to ban people wholesale from any country in this, you know, from 7 countries. You'd have to still, under the law, conclude that everybody in that country is somehow detrimental. So, for example, you know, let's take Iran, for example, and that horrible example of that child, the little 4-month-old girl, who was banned, and she was coming into the United States for surgery. She had a very bad heart condition and was coming to Oregon for heart surgery. Or the elderly couple that were turned around at airports, or physicians or researchers or business people who are bringing commerce to the United States. You'd have to find that every one of those people, the president would have to find that every one of those people is somehow detrimental to the United States. It's just not true. So I think this is a really ugly, if I may use that word, political game that President Trump is playing here to show his supporters that he's doing something that he promised in the campaign. And what he promised in the campaign was to ban Muslims, and that's wrong. That's not what America is about. We're better than that.
Let me ask you for your comments on what I was talking about just now with Professor Hagel. The Trump administration is considering to ask Chinese visitors to the United States to provide their social media information, including their social media handles. This is something that is very new, and although it's in the period of gathering information on this proposal, what is your first reaction to this?
Well, look, I think when people travel to the United States, they have to understand one thing. When they get into the U.S. port and they're being inspected by U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they virtually have very little rights at that point. And that also includes, unfortunately, American citizens. I mean, they can check, the U.S. authorities can check cell phones, like you pointed out with the professor when you talked with him. They can download what's in those cell phones. They can download what's in those computers. I think that asking people for their social media handle, in most cases, is going to cross the line. It's true that somebody who's not an American citizen and doesn't have ties to the United States and is not in the United States doesn't have the same constitutional protections on privacy. However, there's also a moral question. There's also a question of what's right. There's also a question of how intrusive do we have to be. And I think that the smart way to do this would be to do it on a case-by-case basis. If there's a particular individual that they feel is harmful, based on articulable facts, based on concrete facts that they know of, then maybe that makes some sense. But
that's not his style. His style is a blanket ban. so it's easier. Anyway,
you are right.
Finally, let me ask you this. I mean, it bewilders us that as much as we talk about his confusing policies, a Gallup poll showed his approval-disapproval rating was 42% to 53% in the rolling 3-day average posted Monday. That's up from a low of 38% last week. What does it imply? Is people getting used to his way of governing, or is he starting to do a better job? Why the polls are showing that he's doing better?
Well, if we start off by saying this is a historically low approval rating for a new president, regardless, even the 42% vis-a-vis the 38%, so he's bumped up just a little bit. Look, I think that he's got he's got this base of his that isn't going to change no matter what he does, no matter what he says, no matter what outrage he throws, no matter who he insults. I think that what's going to happen is that as time goes on, the Republican Party, the members of Congress who so far have not stood up to Donald Trump, are going to find that their own political necks are on the line, so to speak. Good example was Chaffetz, Representative Chaffetz, a Republican and actually somebody who has been very supportive of Donald Trump and tried to look the other way when people have asked him to do investigations of some of Trump's activities, particularly the connection with the Russians. Chaffetz went home to his district and he met a crowd of voters that were very upset with him, screaming, "Do your job, Congressman, do your job." And I think other Republicans are going to find that same resistance from the voters, and I think that's where his collapse will be.
Well,
Trump's collapse.
You might be wishing that, but actually the polls are actually indicating the opposite. The Republicans have overwhelming support to Trump. However, the support among the Democrats are historically low. Only 8% of Democrats are supporting Trump. But this is really a bigger picture, the deep polarization of the United States that we're seeing at this moment. Yes. Anyway, we're veering off the topic. Thank you very much, David, for joining us again. And that was David Leopold, former president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. You have been watching The Point. I'll be back right after this. Beijing is well placed to be one of the regions to carry out the talent introduction policy brought in by the central government. Now, the Beijing municipal government plans to attract 1,000 high-end global experts before 2020, with the ultimate goal to develop the city into an international talent hub. Now, Chaoyang district in Beijing now is leading the effort to attract international talent through multiple platforms. To learn more about the district's progress in this regard, we have Mr. Zhang Wanling, Talent Development Specialist at Chaoyang Overseas Talent Center. Mr. Zhang, thank you for joining us today. Now, we are talking about the Overseas Talent Entrepreneurship Conference, or OTEC. What is this organization? How does it work?
Right. So I work for Chaoyang Overseas Talent Center. We are a non-profit government agency. So our goal is to help overseas talents to better start their business in China. One of the things we do is through OTEC, which is short for Overseas Talents Entrepreneurship Conference. Each year we will hold a series of startup pitch competitions in both China and abroad. Pitch competitions, basically.
Pitch, startup pitch competition.
Yes, basically you bring your business idea. You will present it to a lot of investors. They are third-party professionals, and you will get the ranking, and you will get a round of competitions, get to a final, and win a prize. It's the 5th year of OTEC now, and I think it's one of the most influential events for startup founders in Beijing or even in China. So we are very proud of that.
What is the, let's say, how many international startup entrepreneurs are interested, and when they come to you, what are their questions? For instance, what are they looking for? What are their difficulties?
Right. There have been a lot of international teams have joined us. If I can give you some of the numbers, for the past 4 years, there has been about over 9,000 entrepreneurs, some kind of involved.
International, foreign entrepreneurs.
Both Chinese and foreigners together, involved in our events. They are from 19 different countries. Take last year alone, we have competitions in New York City, in Silicon Valley, Seattle, Sydney, Israel, and the list goes on. So basically they are looking for investment, right, and to start their business, and they are looking for talents, say co-founders, and they are looking for market. And China and Beijing is one of the best places for all of these kind of resources, and so that's why they are very interested in working with us.
Are there any specific preferential policies to help these people start up their business in Beijing?
Right. One of the policies we have here is called the Phoenix Plan. So Phoenix Plan.
Phoenix Plan.
Right. Phoenix Plan is one of those few that applies both to Chinese entrepreneurs and foreigners. So say last year we have a foreigner that applied, and he was quite surprised that actually he got the plan. So it's about 100,000 yuan without any cost of share. He was quite surprised because he firstly think it was kind of a trick inside.
He didn't believe that was a genuine project.
He didn't believe that was true. Yeah. And actually, we help them. We help them to go through the business registration process. We even advise them on visa issues. I think that's something they will really need.
Yeah. Finally, what kind of advice can you give somebody who is watching, for instance, at this moment, who is dreaming about starting up a business in China? What is the first thing they should do?
Right. I would say, me myself used to live and work in Canada, and I gave up the resident status, work, and take a risk and come back to China. And I didn't regret it because there was such a tremendous opportunity in China, and it's still true today. So,
but the Chinese economy is slowing.
Well, it's like many people have different opinions, and in short term there might be some difficulties, but in the long run I think it's definitely optimistic. And what I tell them is that to take the chance, come to China, talk to us, get our grant, and take the action now.
Okay, thank you very much, Zhang Wanling, joining us from Chaoyang District Government. And you're watching The Point. I'll be right back, and our discussion continues. Now, for China to attract foreign talents is a very important direction for the future. But one pool that China is hoping to tap into better is the huge number of Chinese students studying abroad. As more favorable policies have been put into place, the percentage of returnees have gone up from roughly 40% by the end of 2012 to around half by the end of last year. To understand the situation better, I'm joined in the studio by Gao Feng, CEO and co-founder of the online education platform KG Exam. Gao Feng, thank you for joining us today. Yeah, you are a graduate from the University of Wisconsin-Madison in the United States. What made you decide to come back to China and start your business?
Oh, well, this is a classical question, so I always faced many times.
How do you answer?
People always think that the United States will give you a lot of opportunities for foreigners, but from my perspective, I think the Chinese will have great opportunities for past few years. You know, depends on the economic development over during the past 13 years. You know, we will get approval for our technology, and we also have a lot of opportunities for here.
Is the competition not too harsh? I mean, we have a lot of online training programs, products, and institutions we can choose from. Why do you still decide to go into that area?
Okay, I think I can distinguish our competitors from others because we focus on the training the students weeklies. And you may ask me a question.
Students?
Weeklies,
Weeklies?
yeah.
What is that?
You know, you may ask me a question how we can clarify the students' weeklies, but we developed our AI test system.
AI
test system.
Artificial intelligence.
Artificial intelligence test system, and always we focus on the
Okay.
you know.
Let me come to the more important question here. What kind of support were you given when you start up your business?
You know, the local government give many supports, like the financial and HR consulting for us. Also, we provide some private fund and the other consulting services. Yeah.
How long did it take for you to start your business?
Almost 1 year.
Almost 1 year.
Yeah.
Did you consider it to be long or normal or livable?
Yeah, I will consider it for long.
Yeah. How long has the business been running?
It's 1.5 year.
1.5 year. And you're happy with the progress?
Always, I'm so enjoy it.
You're very optimistic.
Yeah.
What were the difficulties you were encountering in terms of policy, for instance?
I think the biggest difficulty is recruitment.
Equipment?
Yeah, recruitment.
Recruitment?
Recruitment,
Okay.
You know, for our startup company, it's harder to get some intelligence to enjoy your company. So we spend at least 6 months to recruitment intelligence, but at least we just completed half a goal.
Now, now the government is committed to creating a more favorable environment to attract more returnees and international talent. If you were to give one suggestion, what would that be?
I want to, many cities and many provinces and cities in China set up their private fund to support the run or startup companies, but the application procedures is really long for at the beginning companies. So we should simplify the procedures.
So instead of 1 year, maybe in a couple of months.
Yeah, maybe less than 6 months. It's really pretty good. Yeah.
Okay, we appreciated your presence today.
Okay,
thank you, Gao Feng. That was Gao Feng, co-founder of KG Exam. And my last point is right here. Now, we have been talking about today two sides of the same coin in my eyes. On the one hand, America is looking for ways to restrict the number of people entering that country, while on the other hand, China is looking at ways of attracting new talents, including returnees and foreign talents, to its overall workforce. Now, there appears to be a basic clash between what President Trump has been saying publicly and what would actually be best for creating American jobs. Take Silicon Valley as an example. The success there has been the result, in no small part, of the presence of immigrants who have created many jobs. So for Trump to proclaim so loudly that he wants to improve job prospects for the nation while at the same time trying to ban immigrants, that doesn't seem to add up. Or am I missing something very basic here? Anyway, that's it for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. Thank you for watching.